In 2020, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the GOP decided to eschew putting forth an updated policy platform and to instead adopt the 2016 platform verbatim. From my understanding, the party leaders felt that it wouldn't be right to put forth a new platform when they couldn't responsibly hold an in-person convention that year. Though it did get on my nerves to not be able to read an updated platform, you can't really fault them for this, or at least I don't. It was a responsible move, and it allowed them to save themselves from the embarrassment of all of us doing our best to figure out how to use Zoom. I mean, the Democrats figured out how to put out a platform. In 2024, there was no such convenient excuse for the GOP, and so they cobbled together a platform and released it a few days before their 2024 convention, and then approved it on the first day of said convention, the 15th of July, 2024. I was actually really excited for them to put out their platform. It's like this perverse, nerdy desire in me. It's really lame, but I like being able to read through exact, detailed thoughts. It's why I find campaign websites so frustrating. It's just so many broad statements on policy and philosophy and often not a lot of detail. So what are they saying? Who knows? One of the reasons I find the DSA a bit frustrating is that their policy platform is also lacking, in my opinion. So I was planning on reading it, writing a script, and recording a little video. So imagine my utter annoyance when this year's platform was less than half the length of 2016's. So I want to talk about it, and in doing so, I hope to highlight some of the policies and showcase the growing lack of seriousness from the Republican Party. In other words, the 2024 Republican platform proves why you should vote for the Democrats. 1. The Preamble and Bad Writing. I considered titling this section Capitalism and getting everyone to think I'd be talking about the economy and taxes, and then pull the rug out and clarify that I actually mean capitalizing letters. One of the first things that struck me reading the preamble was the constant, random capitalization. Our nation's history. History should not be capitalized, nor should the people in the American people. Trade deals, borders, policies, greatness, historic economic growth, rampant crime, so on and so on. It's a constant typing quirk that acts as if capitalization is a stand-in for other typographic ways of providing emphasis, such as boldface, which is more appropriate in some of these instances. But you cannot have constant emphasis no matter what choice you want to use typographically. On one hand, it grates the eye. On the second, it makes it seem as if you can't write. I want to ask, is that purposeful? In the third paragraph, the preamble includes the all-caps former President Trump-style usage of serious decline. I don't do a Trump impression, but I do stupid voices. Trump's writing style is filled with this sort of thing. He loves capitalizing random words, shouting others. He speaks broadly and simply, so they're imitating his writing style for the serious policy document. I think that calls into question the purpose of the platform. Is it to inform or is it to rile? When I read the preamble, I don't read the words of a serious political party that I just simply severely disagree with. I read a performance that assumes its audience is a group of morons who can't read if you don't write in incredibly idiotic ways. This is not well written, and that is on purpose. Oh, quote, "For decades, our politicians sold our jobs and livelihoods to the highest bidders overseas with unfair trade deals and a blind faith in the siren song of globalism." So let's, for now, push past the dog whistling of the siren song of globalism thing. The GOP obviously was part of those decades of politics they're claiming were dominated by the enemy. The bad writing is an attempt to appeal to populism. Populism is the aesthetics of anger disguised as politics. Suddenly it becomes clear why the document is a lot shorter than 2016. Though it was a good way into becoming the party of Trump at that time and the party of demagoguery, it hadn't yet entirely bought into it. Now, it uses words like magnificently, which is interesting for a supposedly serious document. Migrant invasion, aiming to alter our country. It's fear-mongering because populism and its writing styles have the "we will drill, baby, drill" Did a child write this? I'm going to get to critiquing the policy soon, but I don't think we should let slip how unprofessional this document is. Nor should we pretend that unprofessionalism isn't a cynical performance. Populism bills itself as an us versus them, often the regular folks versus the elites. This platform is their condescending attempt at speaking to regular folks. Rather than write in an easily digestible way, they write as if they're talking to a bunch of idiots. The preamble claims the Republican Party must stand for equal treatment for all. In a previous video I did where I looked at all of the GOP state platforms, I noted that many didn't include non-discrimination statements, and some that did specifically oppose the inclusion of LGBT people in such statements and policies. So, are they lying? Yeah. They also claim that Donald Trump, facing charges for his criminal actions, threatens to destroy the country. It doesn't. A policy document, which can be a bit long, uses the words "and much more" to end a list in a document, meant to tell us all the things they want to do. The preamble gives 20 promises they intend to keep. Yes, they're in all capitals. No, none of them are hyperlinks or anything of the sort. 1. Seal the border and stop the migrant invasion. Seal is an odd word choice. We've seen the word close used throughout the years, but I haven't really seen seal. Why that word? To me, seal conjures up the idea of nothing in, nothing out. I realize that is an uncharitable reading, but a proper team of proper writers would have caught on to how easy it is to twist and fearmonger over that specific word choice, and they would have chosen a different one, unless they mean the uncharitable reading. As I was reading the points, given the sort of document this is, I expected each of these bullet points to be their own section or subsection of the document going forward. 20 promises, 20 points to hit, 20 chapters. Nope. 10, so they're all caps for no real reason. I do want to focus in on some more word choices, though. Point 18 claims they will make our college campuses safe and patriotic again. What does it mean to make a campus patriotic? To me, that sounds like compelled speech. Is that a crackdown on protests, student speech, or restrictions on what is allowed to be taught? On 12, they desired to make the military the strongest and most powerful. Those are the same thing. It's just bad writing. 2, the inflation page. That's right, I said page, as in 1. Oh, but maybe they managed to fit it all in. No. The intro paragraph functions as a high school student 12th grade research paper. Here's my 5-point essay, the things I'm going to talk about, and my thesis statement. Only a research paper is graded more harshly and probably has more effort put into it and probably also has more information in it. Point 1. Unleash American energy. Under President Trump, the U.S. became the #1 producer of oil and natural gas in the world. According to Forbes, the U.S. became the top producer of oil in the world in 2013. Who was president? Well, Obama. Thanks, Obama. The article later goes on to point out that ultimately it was George Mitchell who was responsible for this with the whole fracking thing, and this was pretty much bound to happen no matter who the president ended up being. So, cool. We're starting off with a bit of a lie, and they follow it off with a lie by implication, implying that we're not currently the leading producer of oil and natural gas. According to Investing News Network, the US is currently the largest producer of natural gas. Point number 2 promises to rein in wasteful federal spending. So you would think in a policy document, you would list some of the things you want to cut the budget for. What is wasting all of this money? Are there departments you would like to downsize? Projects you would like to pull out of? Programs you would like to defund? What is it that they want? Are they refusing to say because they're an unserious party without any plans, or because they know that their specific goals would be unpopular if spelled out? Point 3 promises to deregulate. What regulations do they want to get rid of? They don't say. Because again, this is not a serious policy document. Point 4 aims to stop illegal immigration. Because that gets an actual chapter, I'm not going to comment on it here. Point 5 claims it will restore geopolitical stability by showing strength, and that would help end inflation or something. This is their final chapter in the document, so again, put a pin in it. 3. The border. This chapter is half a page longer. I know, that's so much information. They change up their style a little bit here. Their intro paragraph doesn't lay out each and every single point that they're about to make. Why are we being inconsistent in our writing? Because we didn't care, yay! In their first point about securing the border, the platform promises to send a lot of the Fed to immigration. They also want to stick thousands of military members on the border. They don't use the seal language here. Are we sealing it and putting such forces there to keep us in as well? Why did we ever use the word seal? They desire to restore every border policy of the Trump administration, which sounds like recreating those detention centers filled with children that were terrorized. Point 2 includes an unforgivable phrase in a policy document, which is and other policies. No, this is where you tell us what those are. Why are you keeping those ideas a secret from the people meant to be reading this and supporting you? What you hiding? This brief paragraph promises an insanely dangerous idea. We will also invoke the Alien Enemies Act to remove all known or suspected gang members, drug dealers, or cartel members from the United States. An article in Just Security points out that using that act in such a way wouldn't fly because we're not at war with Mexico or immigration, and this is a wartime act. Invoking it this way would be clearly illegal. However, we know they don't care about whether or not what they do is illegal. As Ebright writes, it applies to any non-US citizen, so people who are here perfectly legally who just happen not to be US citizens can be caught up in this act with no rights to argue against it, no trial, and no need for proof beyond that they're from the place the president wants to send them to. The use of the word suspected in the platform gives that game away. This is not innocent until proven guilty. This is a guilty you cannot prove your innocence piece of legislation. You can suspect anyone if you're paranoid or racist enough. If you suspect one person, what's to stop you from having suspicions of their entire family by association? And that leads to their third point, the promise to begin the largest deportation program in American history. They mostly talk about sending back people who are here illegally, but I can't help but think back to the implications of using the Alien Enemies Act and focus on the word suspected. How much of this deportation process will include legal immigrants that the administration simply wants gone? Point 4. Strict vetting. I'm somewhat impressed here that they seem to understand not all Marxists are communists or socialists. That's a pretty basic level of nuance they pretend not to know most of the time. You know, the sort that leads them to call Biden a socialist when he's very much not. Just ask the DSA. But the GOP, at least rhetorically, is willing to call the entire left socialists. So then it isn't hard to imagine that they're implying anyone on the left will not be welcome in this country. They also specifically mention Christian hating. What does that mean? Does that mean actual hatred of Christians? Does that include people who were heavily victimized by the religion and hold a grudge they have no interest or means for acting upon? When it says that they will ensure that jihadists and jihad sympathizers are not admitted, what do they mean? Because of how sparse this embarrassment of a document is, we're left to draw our own conclusions. Because I find the GOP reprehensible, I'm not drawing charitable ones. Based on how the GOP has been talking since October 7th, I would guarantee that they would take any support for the Palestinian people to be jihadist sympathizing, regardless of that person's views for or against Hamas. I feel like this must be pointed out. Most people who are against slaughtering civilians don't like it when any side starts doing it. Point 5. Stop sanctuary cities. While I disagreed with the politics here, what stands out to me is the last sentence. We will require local cooperation with federal immigration enforcement. Let's combine that with the Deportation and Enemy Aliens Act. A city that does resist ICE gathering and deporting non-citizens without a trial, regardless of legal status, could result in a lack of funding, and there's potential the GOP would require all levels of law enforcement to enact this aim of a president, regardless of whether or not he has that authority over said enforcement. Their sixth point seems to disallow the immigration of any migrants with, say, severe disabilities. Because they also promise to end chain migration, one has to offer this hypothetical. A leading member in their field would like to immigrate to the United States. Let's say they do this to pursue the American dream. They love our country. They would also like access to state-of-the-art medical care that we happen to have for a parent, sibling, or cousin, perhaps. This person has proven successful enough to pay for both themselves and whoever it is that they are wishing to care for when they move here. They will not come if they are unable to bring their ward. In this merit-focused system, wouldn't their disabled or sick relative be denied entry despite the fact that they have a benefactor who would more than willingly pay their way? In denying the ward, we also lose the primary applicant. Or is the GOP willing to say that in some cases the merit of one weighs the scale enough to overlook the lack of merit of another they wouldn't immigrate without and who the GOP would otherwise not let in? Of course, after all this talk, they place a statement implying that immigration hurts American workers. That's because this is a sort of blood and soil nationalism that doesn't actually care about legality, threat, compassion, or merit. It cares about the populist message of us versus them and needs someone to hate, to blame, to crush. And if they point and say immigrants are ruining the economy, how many American people can you convince to deport legal residents who've done nothing wrong? 4. The economy. We're back to the 5-point paragraph type of essay writing introductions. We're incapable of picking a style and sticking with it because the writers are not good at writing. We also get the Democrat Party when proper writing would have it as the Democratic Party because that's how words work. The Republicans refuse to say Democratic though because I guess it has stronger associations with democracy. We continue our constant parade of pointless capitalization as well. Point 1. Cut regulations. You might remember this from the inflation page. Wow, we're bringing it up again? Are we any more detailed this time around? Nope. Bad regulations stifle jobs, freedom, innovation, and make everything more expensive. Cool. Give examples. What specifically do you want overturned? Why bring it up again and refuse to give any details? Is it perhaps because the writers were lazy and didn't want to find any? Was it because the committee was incapable of agreeing? Is it because you have no interest in discussing policy here and only want to engage in platitudes where you can get away with it? Or is it because your actual deregulation desires would be unpopular and perhaps dangerous? Point 2, the Trump tax cuts. They propose eliminating taxes on tips. I don't have any strong opinions on this because I'm not a tip worker, so yeah. I did some Googling though, and it seems like some embrace this, others don't care about it. Some would prefer increased wages, some would welcome getting to keep more of their tips. I do wonder how much of this is an attempt to get around annual gift limits without eating into lifetime tax-free gift amounts. People have attempted to get around the taxability of tips before by claiming that they're gifts, actually. This Fox News article implies that any amount given in response to a business transaction would not be considered a gift. If you turn tips into wholly non-taxable income, theoretically, you could tip someone $1 million, and no one would have to pay taxes on that transfer that would otherwise be considered a gift. Point 3 says, look to chapter 5. Great use of space, guys. Point 4 is about energy production. While discussing the use of fossil fuels, it mentions nothing about investing in and creating green infrastructure. The GOP has taken an anti-green energy stance rather than taking the stance, hey, we'll take advantage of both and make us a true powerhouse when it comes to global energy production. After all, from a pure capital stance, if we offloaded a large amount of our energy consumption onto green energy, we have more oil, natural gas, and coal that we can then sell to other countries, as well as making sure that we have vast reserves in the case of some catastrophic event that would require us to use reserves. While my position is more in line with the Green New Deal, the GOP's anti-green stance, denying it wholesale, seems to be purely reactionary instead of attempting to have the United States actually stand at the forefront of the world. Even if you don't want to utilize green energy at home, being the world's top manufacturer and innovator in green energy would allow us to export these technologies to other countries who do want to use them, including to our allies that we might want to have stop relying on, say, Russia's oil reserves. Speaking of reserves, point 5, Champion Innovation, talks about cryptocurrency. Yes, I'm sure we're all very tired of hearing about crypto. This isn't the point, but on American has a hyphen in it. U in capital American is incorrect, and it also looks ugly because you have a random capital in the middle of a word. This is what I mean by continual incompetence. Here the GOP wants specifically Bitcoin, and they don't want a central bank digital currency, aka crypto, attached by the Fed to the dollar. Several countries have or are considering rolling out a CBDC. The Federal Reserve is and has been investigating the possible benefits and risks of creating one, though they note that it cannot be made without Congress telling them to. Of course, reservations about crypto make sense. There are security concerns, as with all crypto. But what interests me here is that the GOP is not anti-crypto. They're explicitly pro-crypto. One of the vast problems with crypto is its volatility. Its value, unattached to the dollar, fluctuates greatly. Go watch the Dan Olson videos on crypto. Are we anti-CBDC but pro-crypto because we like the idea of easy scams and trampling on people? It sounds like the GOP wants no stable crypto. In this same point, they say that they're against Biden's executive orders on AI. I'm assuming they mean the one issued on October 30th, 2023. Having read through that EO, I'm a bit confused on what their opposition is toward. Probably because this platform is allergic to providing details on literally anything, because they know providing details would make the American people want to not vote for them. Much of the EO is focused on making sure the government doesn't allow AI to jeopardize national security, but I think what they're ultimately opposed to is the watermarking of AI so that everyone can identify and discern the difference between what is real and what is artificial, computer-generated. That way, we would know when videos of politicians are real and when they aren't. So we can tell when deepfake porn is, a deepfake. Part of the opposition would come from the fact that only humans and their estates can own or sell their copyrights. If we have a watermark outing things as AI, then it becomes easy to deny things IP protection, which is correct. They shouldn't have it. To keep the arts alive, things created by generative AI must be denied copyright protection. And I think that is what they're against. They want AI to be able to do whatever the fuck they want and use it to fuck with people. Have as much misinformation as you want. 5. American Dream. We don't have a thesis statement after our list of points in our intro paragraph, but we also don't have all of the promised talking points discussed, so that's new, I guess. Point 1, housing affordability. There's a sort of YIMBYism present here with the promise to open federal lands for construction, though there's no suggestion of which lands for what sort of housing and the proximity that housing would have to urban areas or any other such civilization. My uncharitable question is if this is actually about building housing or if it's about an excuse to open up federal land for logging purposes, let's say. To build housing, after all, you have to clear the way for said houses, and certain Republicans do like the idea of letting logging and mining companies tear through federal lands. This would give them a sort of cover for those types of actions. There's no other details as far as any other sort of YIMBY policy where increased supply would lower costs. I am partial to YIMBYism, so I'm not opposed in general to building more houses, but I'm skeptical of the federal lands comment being benevolent in nature. They also mention more deregulation, but once again, they refuse to name any specific regulations they think should be dealt with. Point 2, in their plan to make higher education more affordable, they plan to not do anything about the cost of higher education. They want to create more alternatives. But I do find it important to ask, what alternatives? Apprenticeships, trade school, colleges where the price of admission is military or other civil service? They don't say, because they don't say anything in this platform. This requires the question that always comes up in moments of education debates. What is the point of education? If you answered to get jobs, congratulations, you don't understand education. Point 3, healthcare. They don't mention a single policy here. I know, that is so shocking. They say they want to lower costs of healthcare and prescriptions, but how? How do they aim to do so? Are we going to allow Medicare to negotiate prescription costs? Will we lower the period of patent protection for brand prescriptions so that cheaper generics can be made and sold within a faster time period? Will we change broadcast rules so pharmaceutical companies are no longer allowed to advertise? We then go on about lowering everyday costs with no particular policy. They talk about lower energy costs but have no interest in investing in creating green energy infrastructure to complement fossil fuels, reduce costs, increase US manufacturing and jobs, and increase our revenue from selling to other countries. Because they don't think through any of this. 6. Trade. Well, it's time to talk about the king of failed businesses making deals with other countries and how those might affect the economy. Oh, I wonder how that's going to go. Their intro paragraph goes back to listing points and having a thesis statement, but it only lists some of the points we're going to go over, and the random capitalization is getting increasingly out of control. Here's a typing quirk that gets on my absolute nerves. A $, $1 trillion. Pick one or the other. The $sign already puts the word dollar in there. You're being redundant. This is the same sort of incorrect, accepted bad writing that leads to people, even in the entertainment industry somehow, referring to people being casted when the past tense of cast is cast. This document is filled with bad writing, but let's talk content. This point promises to pass the Trump Reciprocal Trade Act with the idea that tariffs mean that taxes can come down. This article in The Hill points out that doing so would worsen inflation, something he seems to want to lower. In an interview with the Harvard Gazette, economist Gordon Hanson said, "If we want to find policies that could help improve economic opportunities for less educated workers, import tariffs should not be at the top of the list. Tariffs are poorly targeted policy instruments for helping workers." An article in the Financial Times claims Trump's proposed tariffs and tax cuts would hurt low-income Americans the most. They seem to argue for a complete ban on imports from China. They go on to talk about increasing American manufacturing, but don't seem to suggest any policy for doing so except the idea of banning companies who outsource jobs from doing business with the federal government. What are your actual plans, guys? Do you have any? 7. Seniors. Here the platform seems to blame any problems with Social Security and Medicare on immigration. In the preamble, the platform bucked a lot of the rhetoric in the primary by promising there will be no raising the retirement age. Both parties are rightfully concerned about Social Security and have just different ideas about tackling it. The GOP seems to think their economic goals and their immigration policies will fix it. Tying unrelated issues like hardline immigration to Social Security will scare some people into supporting things they might not otherwise. There's not too much to really talk about in this section besides the gross "it's immigrants' faults" kind of vibe. When they talk about chronic disease prevention, there's little information about what they actually mean by that. One thing is increasing access to primary care providers, which, yeah, that's a good thing to advocate for. People I know are having trouble getting a primary care doctor. There aren't openings for new patients. This is a legitimate issue. This is under a point labeled "support active and healthy living." Okay, how? Subsidizing gym usage, subsidies for preventative screenings, increased investments in nutritional research and engineering? Do you have any actual ideas or just platitudes? 8. Education. So we finally get to answer the question, what do Republicans think the point of education is? In their little intro paragraph, they say, "Our education system must prepare students for successful lives and well-paying jobs." They're half right. Education is essential to a successful life, whatever that means to you. But the purpose of general education has nothing to do with jobs. We'll get to it. Point 1 is about principals and teachers. They want to end tenure as a concept and want to embrace merit pay. What is merit pay? By what metric are we judging teachers? Test scores? Essays? Is a good teacher one who gets a class 2 score in the top percentiles, or is it a teacher who raises test scores? If a teacher gets a class of educationally gifted students and thereby has a much smaller ceiling, how are they evaluated in comparison? What if we're going by percentiles and the same teacher has students who score high on average because those students tend to score well on tests in the first place and likely would score in that same percentile regardless of the teacher they have? My guess is the actual goal is to decimate the teachers' unions. 2. Universal school choice. School choice is a way of saying undermining and destroying public education, which has been a long-term goal of the GOP. School choice often means sending taxpayer dollars to private religious institutions for private religious educations, which is a violation of the First Amendment and should be struck down. As noted during the Betsy DeVos hearings, charter schools will sometimes force students to sign away their rights under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Federal dollars must only go where federal law is followed. Private religious schools often discriminate on the basis of religion, sexual orientation, and gender identity, both of student and guardian. That is not following federal rules. 3. Republicans believe education is about creating a workforce. No, it is not. It cannot and must not ever be simply a way to make a workforce. How often do you hear people complain about things they learned in school that they've never ended up using? Oh my god, you poor precious babies. Is that how we're going to start measuring the worthiness of education? With the amount of people using generative AI and this very platform's embrace of it, the stories of teachers getting AI-generated essays in high school and college, will this platform eventually say there's no point in most people learning how to write? How about algebra? Geometry? What about chemistry? World history? Band, choir, art? What suddenly becomes useless to study because most people are not going to get a job in it? You misunderstand what education is. Education is there to enrich the human being. It has nothing to do with whether or not you will use it in the corporate sphere. You use education in that it expands your brain. It teaches it how to expand, enriching the ways in which you can engage with and experience the world, giving you more paths you can follow, more sights and thoughts that you can have, more choices for you. A lot of people in college complain about general education requirements, but general education requirements are important to make sure that you are a well-rounded human person, not to make sure that you can get a job. A liberal arts education exists to make your world larger. People who want to tell you education is not worth it, is bad, that you should only ever focus on your interest in whatever field you think you'll end up working in or whatever field promises jobs, they want you to have a small world. Why the ever-loving fuck should anyone allow that? Point 4. Safe, secure, and drug-free schools. In this brief paragraph the GOP has about making our schools safe, not once do they mention gun violence. They don't mention school shootings at all in their platform. I think a lot of Republican efforts on gun violence amount to theater of the safe. A lot of it leads to restrictions on students, their privacy, and their freedoms. But you would expect in past years that an even remotely serious political party that dared to discuss safety in our schools would make a passing effort to talk about the children that keep dying and how we all want to protect the children. But because the GOP has no interest in putting forth a serious political document and has no interest in being a serious political party, because they are not a serious political party, they don't even mention it in passing. They don't offer their stupid give teachers guns idea. They don't discuss mental health, their go-to scapegoat for violence. They don't talk about their beloved disaster of school resource officers. They don't mention it at all. Because this document does not fundamentally care about the safety of our children. This party does fundamentally not care about our children. 5 parental rights, what the fuck does that even mean? Well, they sure don't clarify here. Sorry, I'm a bit worked up. Education is important to me. So what might they mean by parental rights? Well, let's look at the Parents' Bill of Rights Act House Republicans passed in 2023 and see what it has to say. It says parents have a right to know, which seems to mean must be told, if an employee lets a student use their preferred pronouns or name. No nicknames for Timmy unless mom and dad say yes. You gotta sign off every fucking year. You wanna go by your middle name? Hey kid, get fucked. Most importantly, schools must out children to their parents, regardless of the child's wishes. That is going to cause harm, regardless of how the parents react, actually. And it's going to keep people in the closet, which is the goal. The closet does not remove queerness, it only kills people. Or maybe parental rights, as this Education Week article points out, means Florida conservatives passing their disgusting Don't Say Gay bill, which I do cover in detail in a different video, showcasing that it is actually a Don't Say Gay censorship bill. That's the Moms for Liberty approach. Ironic name for a bunch of people who want to take away educational liberty for other people's children. In that article, Jeffrey Shulman is quoted as saying, "Still, there is no parental right to say I don't want my child to be taught this or that." But it seems Republicans want there to be. Suddenly, we're opting out of lessons on evolution, geology because of the age of the planet, physics because of the age of the universe, history because of the presence of queer people, and so on and so forth. An opinion article in the Washington Post points out, courts have found that parents have great authority when it comes to deciding how to raise and educate their children. This right, however, does not mean that public schools must cater to parents' individual ideas about education. Part of this is because Republicans are pushing for their version of populism. Populism, you remember that? The idea that you can pretend anger is politics as long as you give people someone to hate. Teaching is a specialized skill. People go to school for it. People research it. People research how to do it well. It is difficult. Of course it is. Yes, educators know more about how and what to teach a child than most parents do. That is simply a fact. Professor Michael Barth Berkman is quoted in the AP as saying, "I would say that part of the game here is to just sort of discredit schools and to discredit the public school system." He's right. This isn't about legitimate concern. It's about being anti-education. Suzanne Nossel writes in Time, "A movement that for years sought to prevent the government from controlling how they educated their own children now seeks to decree what entire student bodies and school districts can and cannot learn and read. The rhetoric of parents' rights has morphed from a movement aimed at constraining the power of government over education to one that is mobilizing politicians and legislatures to extend the heavy hand of government into the classroom. A small section of extremist conservative evangelicals continue to aim to control the rest of the population while decrying anyone else existing and having rights beyond what they might want, saying that having rights, me being able to get married, that is government overreach. Those are also the same people who have taken over the GOP. Point 6 reads, "Knowledge and skills, not CRT and gender indoctrination." Ask these people to define critical race theory, and then give them the bonus question of asking what critical theory is, and then ask how those are being taught in grade schools. Chances are you'll find out these people are just racist. You cannot teach about history, about slavery and the civil rights movement, about Japanese American internment camps, about the Holocaust, without discussing racism, or how it affects today. You cannot teach the poetry of Langston Hughes, the song Strange Fruit, anything about Jackie Robinson, desegregation of schools, loving v. Virginia. What do they mean by gender indoctrination? Based on Florida's Don't Say Gay law, it's acknowledging that trans people exist. Can you talk about Shakespearean acting and men playing all the women? That's a historical fact. Can you watch Mulan? Can you say that boys are allowed to wear makeup if a boy shows up in some and you have to break up a bullying ring? I'll just direct you to my talk about Don't Say Gay rather than go over it again here. The long story short is the Republicans wish to have England Section 28 because they want people in the closet and they want to call any acknowledgement of queer people inappropriate. That parental rights thing is a lot of people wanting to go into libraries and get rid of any books with gay people who even make a small cameo appearance. This is not about protecting kids from politics and indoctrination. It is about erasing people. Point 7 is about making sure our schools are making people patriotic. They're pushing their 1776 commission. So what is that? The Commission's report, NBC News says, claims that there is no truth to statements that the Founding Fathers were hypocritical for upholding slavery while claiming that all men are created equal. But if you are a slave owner, you either think all men are not created equal, or you thought slaves weren't people. As an article on Today says, Trump has criticized history courses that cover where America went wrong, saying that anti-racism teachings are child abuse. The 1776 report includes the phrase, blacks enjoyed. No, don't say that. Wow. Maybe this was written by racists. It explicitly makes the claim that the Christian God is responsible for America and that this should be acknowledged, which, again, violates the first. Point 8 is about putting religion back in schools. Students are already allowed to pray and read the Bible in school. Students are not allowed to use their beliefs to bully other students. They cannot answer questions on a science exam with, but this is what the Bible says and you can't mark it wrong because God told me it was true. Schools are not allowed to teach the Bible or to teach that any religion is correct. Students cannot be coerced through any sort of pressure to participate in prayer. Prayers cannot be broadcasted over the intercom. You cannot privilege Christianity. Finally, in this god-awful fucking chapter, point 9, they want to be rid of the Department of Education. This is one of the worst written paragraphs of the whole entire fucking platform, and that irony would be funny if this chapter wasn't outright insulting and infuriating. Republicans seem to want to further destroy education in this country. They do not care about our children. We must not let them destroy their futures. Hi, this is a very aggravating video to write and record, and I'm sure I'll be aggravated when I'm editing it. If you want to help me out, you could like, comment, subscribe. You could go support me over on Patreon. You could buy a copy of my poetry collection, Butterfly Snuff, on Amazon. But what I would like most is if you went out and you voted. And you vote in every single race that there is. And then come the next election cycle, if you're of age, you consider running for office if there is anything, any position unfilled or that it has a incumbent Republican or someone who runs unopposed. Find someone to run, donate, volunteer, just get them the fuck out of our government. And I sound like a doomer. I'm not a doomer. I have a lot of hope, actually. I think things will work out. I think good will win. But, yeah. Okay. Bye. 9. Common sense. Common sense did not guide whoever has been writing this platform. Here we list some of the things we're going to talk about, but not all of them. Whatever. 1. Families. Sanctity of marriage. There's been a lot of talk about how this platform finally is the one where the platform isn't anti-gay. Is that true? What do people mean when they use the phrase sanctity of marriage? I've only ever heard that phrase when people talk about how gay marriage violates that sanctity. So that's what comes to mind here. But let's take a step back. Sanctity is a religion thing. Guess what? The government is not in the religion business, and it cannot be in the religious business. Whether marriages are sanctified or not has nothing to do with the government. I sincerely doubt this is the win some gay conservatives think it is. 2. They're going to do a law and order in the cities. Through what policies? It's implied that they want thorough and extended qualified immunity so cops can commit whatever crimes they want to commit and not ever be held accountable criminally or civilly. They say they're going to replenish police departments but make no suggestions as to how they'll accomplish this. They call for standing against Marxist prosecutors but don't give any examples of what that means or what policies that implies. Is there a single Marxist operating as a prosecutor in this country? Or do they just mean the prosecutor is prosecuting convicted felon Donald Trump? Hey, remember that? He's a convicted felon? That's good. We should maybe mention that a whole lot. They say they'll address homelessness with compassion, but offer no suggestions of what that means. Are we building housing? Are we providing training, food, healthcare? 3 is about DC. Good for them for making sure buildings and monuments are taken care of. Cool. They want more federal control over the city. The more control the federal government has over DC, the more important it is that we all note that DC has no representation in Congress. No voting representation anyhow. The GOP wants to control the city while not allowing its residents to have much of a say at all in this country. Shocking. 4 is about veterans. Apparently, they don't have the money to take care of veterans because of undocumented immigrants. Why did I say it that weird? Because of undocumented immigrants. That's not true, but it sure does let them point the finger and shout hate, like anyone reading their platform is a rabid dog at their command. There's no commentary on PTSD, because they don't care. 5 is about higher education. Hi? Why is this not in your education section? Is it because this is an incompetent document written by bad writers? Yes, it is. They say they'll fire radical left accreditors. What in the ever-living hell does that mean? Do they want to slacken the standards for accreditation? What comes to my mind is how when former Governor Bevin of Kentucky tried to mess with the University of Louisville, and the accreditation agency said, hey, you can't do that. What you're doing will force us to remove their accreditation. They likely want to be able to exert as much political control on public universities as they want and not run into pesky bodies saying, no, there must be a level of independence. Bevin's anti-education angle, by the way, is a large part of what cost him a second term. Deservedly, he sucked. They say they'll drive down tuition, but offered no suggestions of how. When they talk about due process, all that comes to my mind is reports of Title IX violations on college campuses. When they talk about suing schools for discrimination, they likely mean affirmative action. You know, the thing SCOTUS recently slapped down. 6 is about anti-Semitism. There's no mention of their Jewish space lasers congressperson. 7 is liberal arts education. They want to restore it, but earlier they were talking about how school is meant to train you for jobs. Uh-oh, seems like they're contradicting themselves, or they have no idea what liberal arts education means. 8 is about beauty. They want to promote beauty in public architecture. Hi, arts person here. What do you mean by that? Is there a specific art style you find beautiful? Are there principles of beauty you think architecture must match or have a set of? Is this about aesthetics? Is it about making unique pieces that wow people? What do you mean when you say beauty, and why is that necessarily a good thing? Are you going to commission this beautiful architecture? Are you going to start paying artists more? 9 is about how they want to have a party in 2026. Wow. Cool. No details, but I'm glad you gave space in your insanely short, sparse platform to talk about it. 10. For the people. Here we get some of the old ideas of the platform back, but vague because they can't be bothered. Here's a fun line. We will maintain the Supreme Court as it was always meant to be at 9 justices. The way this sentence is constructed implies that the number 9 was always intended. This is ahistorical. If this was meant to be 2 separate ideas, probably so, you should maybe make it into a different sentence. Point 1 is complaining about Trump facing criminal charges to committing those felonies that he committed. They also plan to stop woke government, though they do not define that, do not discuss the policies they disagree with, or mention how they want to remedy that. Cool, good job. 2 is free speech. Tell me, how do you intend to do don't say gay style educational book bannings while talking about defunding institutions who do censorship? We're ordering you to engage in censorship, which we will then use to defund you. Does this mean the SEC will no longer be allowed to issue fines for cursing or explicit sexuality on radio and television? When they say you're going to protect free speech online, does this mean you're going to be forcefully pro-porn and NSFW content, given that that is protected speech and expression? That requires you to be forcefully against Project 2025, to demand Amazon, Smashwords, OnlyFans, and more remove their censorship against non-illegal acts, so performers would be allowed to engage in non-con roleplay, for instance. Somehow, I doubt that that is what they mean. 3 is religious liberty. They want a task force to combat anti-Christian bias. No comments on bias against any other belief or religion because they don't care about other people's religious beliefs. They want Christians to be able to force themselves on everyone else and never have to face restrictions, or never have the restrictions of polite society placed upon them. When they mention that everyone must be allowed to act in accordance with their beliefs, my brain goes to defenses for anti-queer discrimination that claims to be simply simply acting in accordance to religious beliefs. Think Kim Davis. They talked about this in their past platform. Think about how people want to use religion as an excuse to deny healthcare and certain insurances. We're a Catholic hospital, and we don't believe your marriage is real, so we won't allow you to see your dying spouse, actually. 4 is abortion. Supposedly, they support birth control and IVF, so that's cool and new. It's something. They suggest that they'll accept a vote of the people of a state to embrace abortion rights. That seems to go against their entire recent history. They actually make a statement that implies abortion violates the 14th Amendment in general, but yeah, they're totally not coming after abortion completely, like they've always promised they would, and make it illegal and start prosecuting women. 5 is about them being anti-trans. They're just transphobes. They despise trans people and want to make it so that they are shut out of public life. They want you to either detransition or to fucking die. 6 is about election integrity. It has some fear-mongering, but it doesn't mention how their nominee tried to overturn a free and fair election and how a mob attempted to lynch the Congress. I wonder why. 7 is a commitment to protecting territories and a vague statement about greater participation in the country. What does that mean? Giving them statehood? One wonders. I mean, one would hope too, but they don't say. 11, peace and strength. Okay, we are at the final push. Let's get through it. This is the military chapter. 1, national interest. Apparently we need to protect the flag. I don't know if this is a symbolic foreign policy thing or if they literally mean protecting the flag and going against protests against it. I'm tired writing this and reading it. What is a foreign policy focused on protecting the flag? That means nothing. We get another under God thing, so I'm compelled to again point out that we are not a Christian nation. We are a secular nation and must remain so. And in fact, the under God, One Nation Under God logo is unconstitutional. That's my hot take. 2, modernizing the military. They want to give us an Iron Dome. No, we're not currently facing a threat that requires one, but one ran by competent people. It'll increase manufacturing and allow people to feel safe, so you're like, it's whatever. I don't have strong feelings about it one way or the other. They want to get woke left-wing Democrats fired as soon as possible. That sounds like Project 2025, but they're not specific, so I don't know exactly what they mean by that. Does that mean all left-wing members of the military? Are we required to take a political compass test before signing up? 3 is about alliances. They want to end the war in Ukraine, though there is no statement on how they wish to do that. Appeasement to Russia? Funding Ukraine? Urging NATO to step in? Urging the Russian people to rise up? Sanctions? Other pressure, a ground war? They say nothing. Just like in this whole platform. They don't even name the war. When they mention championing independent nations in the Indo-Pacific, do they mean anyone in specific? My mind goes to Taiwan automatically. Are we merely implying that so as to not piss off China preemptively, despite, our whole, we're being so brave and standing up to China thing in the platform? 4, we're strengthening our economy, military, and diplomatic efforts. How? We have no specific policies here at all. Does that mean increasing the budget for the State Department, more investment into ambassadorships and embassies? How about soft power? Are we going to make sure we remain the top exporter of culture throughout the world by increasing our expenditure and investment in American-made art of all kinds? Or will Republicans continue their assault on art funding? 5, and we are back to the border. You already had a section on this. 6, we're wanting to increase domestic manufacturing specifically for defense industries. 7, they want to further increase protection against cyber attacks. Good, yeah. How? What do you mean? Raising security standards is good. Are we hiring more people to do that? Investing in new technology? And, well, that's the end of the platform. But we've still got a little bit more to talk about to really get through it. 12. What's missing? Because this is a pretty bare-bones document, let's talk about what the platform doesn't discuss. Well, the first major thing missing is a policy. This policy platform is practically devoid of it. It's an NF document written by the incompetent. Or to be more generous, it's a document meant to hide the GOP's policy goals behind vague rhetoric, because they know that their policy prescriptions are bad and revealing them leaves them open to political attacks that will inevitably lose them votes. Their positions are not popular. The 2016 platform included a couple of paragraphs about judicial philosophy. They talked about Scalia and natural law. They don't do that here. I vehemently disagreed with the theories put forth in 2016, and I think Scalia was horrid for the country, but that had enough information to send me Googling and reading and forming opinions on their opinions, which is what you want from a political document detailing your supposed policies and philosophies. No such luck here. Speaking of, 2016 included multiple court cases they wanted to overturn, cases that they celebrated, how they would respond to certain cases, and the sorts of rulings that they would like from the courts. There's no such thing here. There's no commentary on Windsor or Obergefell, barely a celebration for Dobbs, but they also didn't mention that case by name. Loper overturned Chevron. This platform has no mention of how Republicans aim to take advantage of that ruling and how they want to run regulatory agencies in light of it. The 11th Circuit has a ban and conversion therapy torture on gay people violates First Amendment free speech, and a stupid, idiotic ruling from Trump judges. The platform doesn't mention the party's opinion on such rulings. They don't mention presidential immunity. They don't mention ethics for the judiciary. They don't lay out their disagreements with the liberal justices. There is no talk of their opinion on what to do about filling court vacancies. Term limits are a popular talking point about people in Congress. The platform doesn't offer an opinion on this one way or the other. Just as we talked about school safety without so much as mentioning school shootings, we don't talk about gun violence anywhere in this platform. You would expect, even in this disaster of a document, some sort of screed about how the evil democrats are going to use gun violence as an excuse to take away your weapons. But no, we don't discuss gun violence at all. There's no talk about how they blame mental health, or the left, or even immigrants for gun violence, all of which would be incorrect and reprehensible, but it would be acknowledging the scourge of gun violence. This platform absconds its duty, so we don't talk about it. Going into the convention, there was an assassination attempt on former president, current felon Donald Trump. There's nary a statement in here about it, and they did have time to add at least a passing mention. You could discuss inflamed political rhetoric while pretending that the GOP isn't filled with harsh and vitriolic language. You could pretend that that's not the whole thing that you guys do. There's no discussion of the art besides that vague mention of beautiful architecture. If we're so obsessed with making sure America stands on top of everything in the world, then we need to continue to make sure that our art stands on top. The platform has no commentary on how it aims to help that, or how it opposes other suggestions to do so. I know there won't be a call for a federal theater project in a platform written by conservatives who despise artists, but there's no talk of funding or taking away funding from the arts in any way. Reading the platform, you would expect a mention of wanting to fund patriotic art. No talk on our museums or libraries, no calls to celebrate the American novel, musical, artistic legends, writers, or musicians. Speaking of art, there's no discussion on NSFW material in general. Project 2025 calls for the banning of porn, criminalizing those who make or distribute it, and putting people who consume it on the sex offenders registry. While the GOP attempts to half-heartedly distance itself from Project 2025, they don't mention this at all. It would be an opportunity to do said distancing. The GOP led efforts for failing age verification in certain states, the sort of law that has Pornhub banning itself in those jurisdictions. While there's a mention of birth control, there's no mention of contraceptives, something some on the right have decided is a good target for their next thing to ban. Speaking of ways to prevent the spread of STIs and unwanted pregnancies, there's no discussion on their philosophy for sex education. Obviously, knowing the GOP, they would talk about how abstinence-only education is the only godly way to go forward, which has been proven not to work, and it is bad policy, but they don't even mention it. They don't talk about how they hate comprehensive sex education, the thing that, actually works, that they oppose time and time again. There's no sort of post-mortem on the response to the COVID-19 pandemic, what they learned, the things that went right, and what they thought were mistakes, or how they would respond differently if another pandemic were to break out during a theoretical GOP-controlled government in the time before their next platform comes around. Despite their talks of family and IVF, there's no discussion of adoption. Coming from the GOP, you'd expect a sort of adoption agency should be allowed to discriminate because they're religious type of line, but there's nothing. There's also nothing about surrogacy, another place people like to attack gay people and women's autonomy. There's no real talk about drugs or alcohol besides drug-free schools and, Fenty. There's no talk about cannabis and their opinion on it. There's no talk about nicotine vapes, cigarettes, and what age they think you should be to buy those products. There's no talk about pushes to ban or severely limit nicotine sales. There's no talk about the opioid epidemic. They don't discuss the post office and their opinions on it. They don't talk about net neutrality or even the conservative pet talking points about Section 230. They don't discuss drag queens or infrastructure. This platform is so thoroughly empty that you could go on and on and on about how much it completely ignores. And that is because it doesn't care about informing people about policy. It doesn't care to function as an actual platform. 13. The makers. So who made this thing? Who signed off on this brief spiel of glaring incompetence? Let's start with the people who should be most embarrassed to have their name on this platform. The editors. The people who looked at all of the hard writing, the atrocious design, the terrible typographic decisions and said, yeah, that's fine. First, we've got Ted Royer, founder of Dissident Communications and former speechwriter for Trump. Suddenly, the horrible writing makes sense. Trump's speeches are almost uniformly bad. Hey, maybe get better at your job. Just a thought. The other editor is fellow Dissident Communications member Alec Torres, another Trump speechwriter, which, again, explains the horrible writing. Hey, Torres, get better at your job. While Googling Torres, I actually read some of his articles, and he is not a bad writer. So why the hell did he sign off on this? That makes it clear to me that this is poorly written on purpose. It is a cynical ploy made under the belief that all of their supporters are morons who can't handle competent writing. Because Trump can't write his way to a C on a 5th grade essay even with the help of ChatGPT, they have to piece together shoddy sentences in a poorly constructed document so they don't outshine him by showcasing how utterly incompetent he is. We think the base is filled with people who can't handle an actual platform, so we'll hand them this, in the hopes it'll make them angry. We trust them to be too dumb to get annoyed with the lack of information. Assistant editor Brittany Baldwin is also a former speechwriter for when the felon was the president. So 3 of the people who helped the former president consistently sound like a raving lunatic edited an embarrassment of a platform. That speaks super well for him, doesn't it? The platform committee is chaired by Senator Marsha Blackburn. Blackburn opposed Obergefell and Bostock. I unfortunately watched her speech at C-SPAN. She hates the IRS and wants to let more people commit tax fraud, I guess, rather than, make it easier for people to understand and file their taxes. She calls DEI racist because she is, a racist. She talks about cutting regulations, but again, doesn't make any mention of any regulations that she would want cut. It was a bad speech, Senator Blackburn, a bad speech. I wonder why the platform is bad. Well, it might be because she thinks the base is filled with idiots. The New York Post quotes her as saying, "What we heard repeatedly is that people wanted a document that was simple, that was concise, that would tell people what we believe, and also lay out what we're going to do about the problems that the country is facing. People wanted something that was readable, something they could print off and take as they go door to door." The platform, Senator Blackburn, is not readable. It is a mess. The writing style is horrendous. There's no consistency. You failed, Senator. You also failed to explain what you're going to do about problems facing this country because the platform holds no policy prescriptions. She wants to make it illegal for people to take minors across state lines for an abortion in a state where it would be legal for them to get one because she doesn't care for women. She supports the ineffective internet censorship bill, COSA. Oh, hey, remember the platform talking about hating censorship? It was a blatant lie, of course. How about co-chair for the platform committee, Representative Michael Waltz? Well, he is for don't say gay laws and views LGBT people being acknowledged as sexualization. He also joined in on the effort to overturn the 2020 election because he doesn't believe in democracy. And actually, that's enough. That's enough for me. His other positions don't fucking matter once you start deciding democracy should be overturned for your idiot baby master. Michael Whatley runs the RNC. While adding some distance between himself and Project 2025, he didn't actually comment on its content. Oh, and as a North Carolinian paper puts it, he also backed Trump's false claims of voter fraud in the 2020 election. He also doesn't say he'll accept the 2024 results if Trump loses. Wow, another person making this document who doesn't want democracy. Such a shocking position. I'm shocked. My mind is blown. Conclusion. Thank God. This is a shoddy document, horridly written by a collection of dangerous conservatives who don't care at all about policy. They view their supporters as a group of idiots who couldn't understand a competently written document. They do not want to discuss actual policy details, goals, and philosophies, sacrificing all three for shouting and emphasis. Painting over nothing with a vague promise of Trumpian rhetoric doesn't actually put anything in that nothing. They don't put in details because they know their positions are opposed by the majority of Americans, and detailing them would lose them support. Maybe they know that too much detail will show that Project 2025 is what the GOP wants. That, or they don't have any actual positions. All the serious people left the party and want nothing to do with them. As such, they don't really have goals or opinions. They have the anger of populism and nothing else. I almost feel bad for Republican voters. Your politicians despise you and view you as simpletons. Best of luck to you. And even more luck to the rest of us.
Sprinkle your grace on us. Fall down periwinkle snow. Bring us peace. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Hail Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners.